It started as a normal stop, the kind you do without thinking. A big box store on a Friday evening in Overland Park, Kansas, bright lights, polished floors, that low hum of air conditioning that makes every aisle feel the same. I was pushing a cart with a few things for the weekend: paper towels, groceries, a pack of socks my son claimed he couldn't live without. My wife had stepped away near the front to take a call. That part was ordinary. She worked in healthcare administration. Calls came at odd times. I didn't question it. I just finished scanning items and listened to the beeps, one after another, like punctuation. I was tapping my card when I noticed the security guard standing a few feet away from the register area, watching me instead of the doors. He was older, gray hair, neat uniform, the kind of face that looked tired but careful. When I made eye contact, he didn't wave me over right away. He waited until the cashier handed me the receipt. Then he came closer and lowered his voice. "Sir," he said, "come with me. You need to see this yourself." He didn't sound excited. He sounded uneasy, like he wished the words belonged to someone else. I looked past him toward the front of the store. My wife wasn't there, just shoppers moving in and out. A kid whining near the candy display, a cartwheel squeaking somewhere behind me. I kept my expression calm, not because I was brave, because I didn't have enough information to react to. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer in full. He just tilted his head toward a side hallway near the fitting rooms and employee-only doors. "It's on the monitor," he said. I picked up my bags because that's what my hands knew to do, and followed him. As we walked, I noticed the details I normally ignored: the soft rubber mat by the hallway, the faint smell of detergent from the stockroom, a radio chirping once, then going quiet. The guard's keys tapping his belt with each step. We stopped at a small back station, a desk with two screens angled away from the public. The guard reached forward and tapped one of the monitors, bringing up a live feed. "This one," he said. I leaned in, and there she was, my wife, Maya, not at the front, not by the car, not on a work call the way I imagined. She was near the corridor outside the fitting rooms, half turned toward the wall, phone up near her mouth. She wasn't whispering the way you do when something is confidential. She was smiling, not a polite smile, not the kind you give a stranger. It was relaxed, warm, almost playful. The kind I hadn't seen much lately, not with two kids and schedules and life cutting everything into smaller pieces. On the screen, she brushed her hair back with one hand, a small, familiar gesture. Then she laughed into the phone like she had all the time in the world. The microphone didn't pick up everything clearly, but the back station was close enough to hear bits through the thin wall and open hallway. Her voice carried in that casual way that happens when someone forgets where they are. "I told him I was on the phone with the school," she said. A pause. Then, softer, but still clear enough. "He's so easy." I didn't move. I didn't blink fast. I just watched. The guard stood beside me, not looking at the screen anymore. He was watching my face like he was trying to measure how bad this would get. On the monitor, Maya shifted her weight and leaned her shoulder against the wall, relaxed. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't nervous. She looked like someone who believed the world would stay arranged the way she liked it. Then she said something that made my stomach go still. "Just one more night," she murmured, "and then I'll tell him." The guard cleared his throat, quiet. "I figured you'd want to know," he said. I nodded once. That was all. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't rise, not because I wasn't feeling anything, because I was suddenly aware that anger would be wasted motion, and wasted motion makes you sloppy. I looked at the timestamp on the feed. I remember that detail because it mattered later. Then I stepped back from the screen. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. I walked out the way we came, carrying the bags like it was still just a normal Friday night. I didn't rush. I didn't look around for her. I kept the same pace, the same posture. I loaded everything into the trunk. When Maya came out a minute later, she was composed again, phone down, face neutral, a smooth return to the version of herself I was used to seeing. "Sorry," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. "School stuff." I smiled, small and controlled, like nothing had changed. "No problem," I said. "Everything good?" She nodded and leaned over to kiss my cheek. Her skin smelled like her usual lotion, but something else sat under it. A sharper scent, not strong, just present enough for me to notice once I was looking for it. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove home with both hands on the wheel, steady. That night, after the kids were asleep, she put her phone face down on the nightstand and fell asleep faster than I did. I stayed awake, not thinking in speeches, not replaying scenes like a movie, just watching, listening, noticing. The way she kept her phone closer than she used to. The way her breathing changed when a notification lit up the screen, even though she didn't reach for it. And at some point, in the dark, I made a quiet decision. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I was going to confirm what I saw, because 2 days later, I was going to receive something I didn't expect at all, and it would tell me exactly where to start. Then I waited. Deepening context. The next morning felt almost too normal. I got up before everyone else, the way I usually did. The house was quiet. The dishwasher light blinked from the night before. I started coffee and stood at the counter with my hands on the mug, letting the warmth settle into my palms. Outside, the neighborhood was still. A few porch lights on. A newspaper thumped somewhere down the street. The kind of calm that makes you believe nothing bad can happen inside a clean, predictable life. Maya came down a little later in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, hair tied back. She looked at me and smiled like she always did. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I answered. She moved around the kitchen, opened the fridge, grabbed the kids' yogurt. Normal motions, familiar routines. She didn't look guilty. She didn't look nervous. If anything, she looked lighter than she had in weeks. That was the first thing that bothered me in a clear, definable way. Not that she might be lying, that she seemed relieved. I made breakfast, packed lunches. The kids argued about which cup belonged to who. The dog scratched at the back door. Life kept moving, almost politely, as if it didn't want to interrupt. I drove the kids to school. Maya followed in her car to her office. We waved at the curb like a normal couple who still believed in the story they told everyone else. When I got back home, I didn't sit down. I walked into my home office, closed the door, and opened a plain notebook I kept in the top drawer. It wasn't anything official, just paper. No apps, no passwords, nothing that could be accidentally discovered. At the top of the page, I wrote the date. Then I wrote 3 short lines. Time she stepped away, where I last saw her, what she claimed the call was about. That was it. I didn't write feelings. I didn't write theories. I just wrote what could be verified. I'd learned a long time ago, in a different job and a different life, that memory is useful but unreliable. People remember what they want to remember. They forget what doesn't fit. Paper doesn't. Maya texted me around noon. "Busy day. Might be late tonight. Volunteer planning meeting." Volunteer planning. That was new language. I typed back, "Okay." 1 word. No questions. I watched the message status. Delivered, read, then nothing. That afternoon, I did what most people do when they're trying not to panic. I cleaned. Not aggressively, not like I was scrubbing away rage, just quietly organizing the garage shelves, taking a box of old cables and tossing what we didn't need. My mind stayed calm as long as my hands had a job. Around 5, my phone rang. It was my sister, Lauren. Lauren was a family law attorney in St. Louis. She had a teenage daughter, a busy practice, and a low tolerance for nonsense. We weren't the kind of siblings who talked every day, but when we did, it was direct. "What's up?" she asked. I kept my voice even. "I need you to listen," I said. "And I need you to not react out loud." There was a pause. Then her tone shifted to something more focused. "Okay." I told her what happened in the store. I kept it clean. No dramatics, just facts. When I finished, she didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "Are you okay?" She said, "Do you have proof?" That was why I called her. "Not yet," I said. "Then you're going to get it," she replied. "You're not going to guess your way through this." I looked at the notebook on my desk. "That's what I'm doing," I said. She exhaled, slow. "Good." 2 rules, she said. 1. Don't confront until you have documentation. 2. Don't tell anyone who could leak it back to her. I'm not telling anyone, I said. I know, Lauren said. But people get emotional and start looking for support. That's when they get sloppy. I didn't argue. She continued. Do you share finances fully? Yes. Any separate accounts? Not officially. Then you start there, she said. And you start quietly. If she's doing something, money usually tells the truth first. That night, Maya came home after 9. She moved carefully, like she didn't want to wake the kids, but she wasn't tense. She slipped her shoes off by the door and came into the kitchen, where I was rinsing a plate. Sorry, she said again, same casual word, same practiced softness. It ran long. What kind of planning meeting? I asked, lightly, like it was just conversation. She didn't miss a beat. A staffing thing, she said. We're coordinating a fundraiser. For who? She opened the fridge, leaned down, pretending to search. A community initiative, she said. You wouldn't know it. That was the second thing I wrote down later, not because it sounded impossible, because it sounded rehearsed. She ate a few bites of leftovers, checked her phone twice, then tucked it under her thigh on the couch like it was fragile. When I asked about the kids' school project, she nodded and smiled and said the right things, but her attention never stayed in the room. At bedtime, she went to the bathroom with her phone. The door clicked. The faucet ran. The sound was too deliberate, like a cover. When she came back, she placed the phone face down again. I turned off the light. And in the dark, I made a second decision. I wasn't going to rely on coincidence. I was going to build a record. The next 2 days became quiet and systematic. I didn't stalk. I didn't follow her around town. I just watched patterns. What time she left. What time she returned. How often she claimed a call was school stuff when the kids were already asleep. How her gym bag, which used to be dumped on the laundry room floor, stayed zipped and placed carefully in the trunk. On the 3rd morning, while she was in the shower, I heard her phone buzz on the nightstand. One buzz, then another. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I watched the screen light up just enough to show a preview line, a name I didn't recognize. Just a first name, Evan, and under it, 4 words that didn't belong in a normal conversation between co-workers. Last night was worth it. The screen went dark again. I sat there on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly, letting my mind stay clear. When Maya came out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair, she glanced at the nightstand, and her hand moved just a fraction faster than normal. She picked up the phone, tapped it twice, and smiled to herself before she noticed I was watching. What? She asked, too quickly. Nothing, I said. Then I stood up and left the room. That afternoon, I made one call. Not to a private investigator, not to a friend who would want to talk about it for hours. I called someone who dealt in data, not opinions. A digital forensics consultant named Martin. Years ago, I'd helped him through a tough situation involving custody and a false accusation at work. I'd kept my word then. He owed me a clean favor now. He answered on the 2nd ring. This is Martin. It's Daniel Harper, I said. A beat. Then his voice softened, recognizing me. Daniel, haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? No, I said, but I need this handled quietly and professionally. Tell me what you need, he replied. I stared at the notebook, the dates, the times, the repeated phrases. I need you to pull what's been deleted, I said. Messages, voice notes, anything in the cloud. I need it documented, not guessed. There was a pause, then the tone of someone stepping into work. Do you have legal access to the device or accounts? He asked. I do, I said. Everything is shared. Phone plan, cloud backup, all of it. Then it's doable, he said. But you need to understand something. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. I understand, I said. He exhaled once. Okay, I'll send you a secure link. You'll upload the account permissions. Give me 48 hours. Fine, I said. Before I hung up, he added, one more thing. Don't confront until you have the full picture. People confess when they think you only know half. I'm not confronting, I told him. Then I ended the call. That night, Maya kissed me on the cheek before bed, like a habit, and rolled away from me with her phone tucked close. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft mechanical click of the air vent turning on and off. 2 days. That's what Martin said. And when those 2 days were done, I was going to open a file that would change the way I saw my entire marriage. I didn't know exactly what was inside yet, but I knew one thing. It wasn't going to be nothing. Then I waited. First power shift. On the second day, Martin sent the link at 6:12 a.m. I saw the email before the sun was fully up. The subject line was plain, almost boring. No names, no details, just a short code and a timestamp. I made coffee, sat at my desk, and clicked it with steady hands. The portal asked for two-factor verification. Then it asked for permissions. I moved through it slowly, reading each line. I wasn't rushing. Rushing is how you miss what matters. When I finished, the screen displayed one sentence. Upload complete. Processing. I left it there and went back to my day like I hadn't just handed my life over to a digital autopsy. Maya took the kids to school that morning. She hummed while she packed lunches. She wore a light perfume I recognized, but it was heavier than usual, like she'd put it on for someone who would be standing close. Before she left, she turned and said, "I might have another late one tonight." I nodded. "What time?" I asked. She shrugged. "Not sure. Depends." "Okay," I said. She kissed the top of my head like she was being affectionate, like she was reassuring herself. Then she left. The house went quiet. I didn't sit and spiral. I did what I needed to do. Answered emails, paid a couple bills, cleaned up some project documents from work, normal tasks, a steady pace. Around lunch, I checked our joint account and the credit card portal. I wasn't hunting for drama. I was looking for movement. There were small transfers I didn't recognize, spaced out like someone trying not to be noticed. $180, $250, $90. Nothing that would trigger alarms, but consistent enough to form a pattern. The sender name was vague, some generic payment processing label, the kind people skim past. I copied the details into my notebook, date, amount, label. Then I stopped. I didn't call the bank, not yet, step by step. That evening, Maya came home earlier than expected. She seemed almost excited, like she was carrying a private win. "You won't believe what happened today," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. I looked up from the sink. "What happened?" She rolled her eyes. "This woman at work. Total mess. Anyway, long story." It wasn't long. She didn't actually tell it. She just wanted the sound of talking, a layer of normal. Something to cover the real story she wasn't sharing. At 9:40 p.m., her phone buzzed and she stood up immediately. "I'm going to take this," she said. "Sure," I replied. She walked into the hallway, turned her back, and lowered her voice. I could hear a faint murmur through the wall, like a radio on low. I put my phone face down on the table and waited until the hallway went quiet again. When she came back, she smiled too quickly. "All good," she said. I nodded once. That night, after she fell asleep, I got up and walked downstairs. I didn't do it like a sneak. I did it like a man checking a lock. Calm, routine. I opened my laptop and logged into the secure portal again. A new folder had appeared. Martin had titled it with another code. Nothing personal. Inside were subfolders, messages, photos, voice notes, account activity, metadata logs. I stared at it for a moment before clicking anything. Then I opened messages. The first thread was with Evan, not a coworker thread, not even close. It started weeks earlier, flirty lines, short compliments. Then it turned into planning. "Tomorrow night? Same place. I'll tell him it's school stuff. I miss you." There were deleted messages too, recovered and highlighted. Martin's tool flagged them with timestamps. The deleted ones were worse, not because they were graphic, but because they were casual. They talked about me like I was furniture. "He won't notice. He never checks. He trusts me too much." I didn't flinch. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I just kept reading. Then I opened voice notes. The first one was her voice, laughing softly. It wasn't the laugh she used around friends. It was quieter, more intimate, like she was sharing something private. Last night felt easy, she said in the note, breathy and relaxed. I forgot what that felt like. A man's voice responded in another note, low, confident, not someone nervous about consequences. We're almost there, he said. Just keep it smooth. I listened once. Then I stopped. I wasn't going to torture myself by replaying it. I moved to photos. Most were nothing. Screenshots, random images. Then I saw a thumbnail that made my throat tighten in a small, controlled way. A photo taken inside the same store, time-stamped. 12 minutes after I paid for the groceries. My wife stood in a side corridor near the fitting rooms. Evan was beside her, not facing the camera. The angle was slightly above, like security footage captured from a higher point. They weren't kissing in the photo. They weren't doing anything outrageous. That wasn't what hit me. It was her face. Relaxed, open, light in her eyes. A half smile that belonged to a younger version of her, a version I hadn't seen since before the kids, before the weight of routine. In the photo, his hand was close to hers, not fully holding, just brushing. Like a test, like he knew she would allow it. I stared at the timestamp again. It lined up with the receipt in my wallet. I sat back in the chair and held still. Not because I was numb, because my mind was rearranging itself around facts. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was documented reality. I opened account activity. Martin had flagged something I hadn't seen clearly yet. Those small transfers weren't random. They were connected to a prepaid debit account, a private debit card under a company name that wasn't a real company, a newly filed LLC. The LLC name was simple, generic, meant to blend in. But the initials were familiar. They matched Evan's. I wrote it down in the notebook. Then I opened a blank page and drew a simple line. At the top, I wrote, what I know, what I can prove. What I need next. Under what I know, I listed the obvious. Affair, lies, coordination, financial movement. Under what I can prove, I listed the evidence. Recovered messages, voice notes, photo timestamp, LLC filing, transfer pattern. Under what I need next, I left space. Then I closed the laptop. I didn't go back upstairs right away. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. The house was silent except for the refrigerator motor and the faint ticking of the clock over the stove. I drank the water slowly and looked at the window above the sink, at my own reflection layered over the dark yard outside. I didn't look angry. I looked awake. Upstairs, Maya shifted in bed and murmured something in her sleep. The sound was soft, familiar, almost domestic. I went back up, slid into bed, and stared at the ceiling again. My breathing stayed even, but inside, the work had started. Not the emotional work, the structural work. Because the next morning, I was going to call my sister Lauren back, and I was going to say one sentence that would change the direction of everything. I have proof. Then I waited. Strategic escalation. Lauren didn't react when I told her I had proof. She just said, good, now we do this in order. That word, order, mattered. Because once you start moving pieces, you do not get to put them back the way they were. You either build something clean, or you create a mess you have to live inside. I met Lauren 2 days later in a quiet conference room at her firm in St. Louis. I drove over alone. No music. Just road noise and my own thoughts staying in a straight line. She didn't hug me. She slid a legal pad across the table and clicked her pen once. First, she said, you stop talking about this like a husband. You start thinking like a record keeper. I nodded. She asked me questions the way attorneys do. Short, specific, easy to answer if you are telling the truth. How long? Any shared devices? Any shared accounts? Any kids involved in her schedule changes? Any financial changes you can document? I gave her facts, not guesses. When I finished, she leaned back and said, okay, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to confront in the kitchen. We're not going to argue in front of the kids. We're not going to let her control the narrative. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Then she held up 3 fingers. Step 1, she said. We secure your legal position. That means you hire a family law attorney in your county, someone who isn't emotionally attached. I can guide, but I won't be the lead counsel. Conflict rules. Done, I said. Step 2, she continued. We stabilize finances, not punish, stabilize. We document asset movement and we prevent new movement. Okay. Step 3, she said. We plan the confrontation like a meeting, not like a fight. Controlled setting. Witnesses only if needed. Paperwork ready, no speeches. That was the shift, not from love to hate, from confusion to procedure. That same week, I met with an attorney in Johnson County. Quiet office, simple handshake. He read the folder, the timeline, the messages, the transfers. He didn't widen his eyes, he just nodded as he turned pages. This is clean, he said. This is usable. Then I met with our financial advisor, a man we'd been working with for years. I booked it as a routine check-in, same time slot, same office. When I sat down, I asked one question. If money is being moved quietly from a joint account, how early do we see the pattern? He didn't ask why, he just pulled up statements. It depends, he said, how clever the person thinks they are. He pointed to the same small transfers I'd flagged. He traced them across months, not weeks. She's using a slow drip, he said. That's intentional. It's designed to avoid attention. I stayed calm and asked for a printed copy of everything. Dates, amounts, vendor codes, linked accounts. He handed them to me in a folder and said gently, "Do you want me to freeze anything?" "Not you," I said. "Not yet." On the drive home, I called the bank from my car, parked in a grocery store lot where nobody I knew would see me sitting still for too long. I spoke to the fraud department. I didn't say, "My wife is cheating." I didn't say, "I want revenge." I said, "I need to review unauthorized transfers connected to a new entity. I have documentation." They gave me a case number. They gave me a process. They told me what would happen next. That was enough. At home, I did one more thing. I pulled out the home loan documents. Years ago, when we bought the house, my father had co-signed. Not because we couldn't afford it, but because he liked safety nets and paperwork. There was a clause attached to the deed structure that limited what could be done without consent tied to that co-sign arrangement. I brought it to my attorney. He read it twice, then he nodded. "We can protect the home from being leveraged," he said. "Not by drama, by legal structure." Within days, the right filings were prepared. The house became a locked door she did not know existed yet. Meanwhile, at home, I acted normal. I cooked. I helped with homework. I asked Maya about her day with the same even tone. I didn't press. I didn't accuse. I observed. Her phone never left her hand for long. She started taking showers that lasted too long and ended with her checking her screen before she dried her hair. She stopped leaving receipts in her purse. She smiled at texts and then looked up at me like she had to remember which version of herself to wear. I kept writing. And then I made the decision that Lauren had already predicted I would need. I was going to end it in a room designed for work, not emotion. So I reserved a small conference room at a co-working space downtown in Kansas City. Neutral, clean, glass walls frosted enough for privacy. Front desk staff who didn't care who you were. I booked it under my name. 30 minutes, no extensions. Then I sent 2 messages. To Maya, I wrote, "Investor meeting Friday. I need you there. It's important." To Evan, using the contact info Martin had pulled, I wrote, "Opportunity to discuss expansion. Brief meeting. Friday. Downtown." No hints, no threats. Just a calendar-style invite and an address. After I hit send, I put my phone face down on the table. I sat there for a moment, listening to the quiet of the house, the dryer turning, the dog shifting on the floor, a distant lawnmower somewhere outside. Friday was coming, and for the first time since that night in the store, I felt something steady, not satisfaction, clarity. Then I waited. Controlled confrontation. Friday morning, I dressed the way I dress for work meetings. Clean shirt, simple watch, no cologne. Nothing that looked like I was trying to prove a point. Maya wore a fitted jacket, and the same perfume I'd bought her last anniversary. I noticed it when she walked past me in the hallway. She didn't look at my eyes for long. Not because she knew, because she was distracted. On the drive downtown, she talked about traffic and school schedules. Normal topics, safe topics. Her phone sat in her lap, screen down, like it was waiting for permission to light up. When we got to the co-working space, the lobby smelled like fresh coffee and printer paper. Quiet music, a receptionist who smiled without curiosity. I checked us in. Maya stood slightly behind me, tapping her nail against her phone case. "Who's the investor again?" she asked. "Someone interested in a small partnership," I said. "You'll see." I walked us to the conference room. Frosted glass, 2 chairs on one side, 1 chair on the other, a small table, a legal pad placed neatly in front of my seat, 1 envelope on top of it. I didn't sit yet. I stood by the window and looked down at the street for a moment, letting the quiet do its work. Then the door opened. Evan stepped in first. He was mid-30s, dressed like someone who wanted to look credible. Blazer, clean shoes, hair styled with intention. He looked surprised to see Maya already there, then he covered it fast. Maya walked in right behind him, and for 1 short second, her face lost color. Not panic, not yet. Just the moment someone realizes the room is not what they thought. I turned toward them and kept my voice level. "Sit," I said. They both sat. Close, but not touching. Careful, like they still believed careful mattered. I took my seat across from them and slid the envelope forward an inch. Not thrown, not dramatic, just placed where it belonged. Maya stared at it like it could bite. Evan tried to speak first. "Hey," he said, forcing a friendly tone. "What is this?" I looked at him for a beat, then at Maya. "This is the part where you stop pretending," I said. Maya's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Evan leaned back, then forward again, trying to control the air in the room. "If this is about something personal," he said, "you have no right to bring me into it like this." I nodded once, slowly, like I'd heard him. "You're already in it," I said. "You've been in it." Maya finally reached for the envelope. Her fingers shook just enough to be visible. She pulled out the first page, saw the bank statements, and her eyes moved quickly, scanning like she hoped the words would change. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fill the silence. The silence did the work for me. Evan reached over, trying to see. Then he stopped when he saw the next page, the message logs, the recovered deletions, the timestamps, the photo. He didn't swallow hard. He didn't slam anything down. He just went still, like someone recalculating what kind of trouble they're in. Maya whispered, "Daniel, I can explain." I shook my head once. "I'm not here for an explanation," I said. "I'm here to end the process you started." Evan's jaw tightened. "So what?" he said, voice sharper now. "You think you can just ruin people because your feelings are hurt?" I looked at him calmly. "This isn't about my feelings," I said. "This is about records." I tapped the envelope lightly with 1 finger. "Messages," I said. "Receipts, transfers, a fake LLC tied to your initials, and a timeline that matches my grocery receipt down to the minute." Maya's eyes lifted, wet now. She didn't look angry. She looked exposed. I continued, still even. "I've already met with an attorney," I said. "I've already opened a bank case for the transfers. The house is protected. And starting today, any contact between you and my children will be treated as a legal problem." That last part landed. Maya's breath caught. Evan tried to recover. "You can't just—" I held up my hand slightly, not aggressive, just a boundary. "I'm not debating," I said. "I'm informing." Then I looked at Maya. "I'm filing for separation," I said. "There will be custody terms. There will be financial disclosures. If you try to rewrite the story, I will correct it with documents." Her shoulders shook once. She lowered her gaze to the pages again, as if staring longer would soften what was written there. Evan stood up partway, then sat back down. He looked like he wanted to leave, but didn't know if leaving would make it worse. I stood, not to threaten them, just to signal the meeting was over. You should both talk to counsel, I said. And you should both stop moving money. Evan opened his mouth again, then closed it. His confidence had drained quietly like a sink emptying. Maya looked up at me, voice small. Are you doing this to punish me? She asked. I paused, just long enough to be honest. I'm doing this to protect what's real, I said. Then I walked to the door, opened it, and held it briefly, not as courtesy, but as control. They stayed seated. When I stepped into the hallway, the air felt cooler. The noise of the building returned, muted phones, distant footsteps, the hiss of an espresso machine down the hall. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt organized. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed once, a message from Lauren. Send me the time you met, and don't go home alone tonight. I read it, put the phone face down on the passenger seat, and sat still for a moment with both hands resting on the steering wheel. Then I started the car. Resolution. I didn't go straight home. I drove to a quiet branch office of our bank first, the kind with empty parking spaces and a lobby that smelled like carpet cleaner. I asked for a private desk, showed my ID, and gave them the case number the fraud department had issued. I kept my voice calm. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to document. The banker nodded and pulled up the account history. I slid over a folder with printed statements, the LLC filing, and the transfer pattern highlighted by date and amount. He didn't look shocked. He looked focused. I can open an internal review, he said, and we can restrict certain actions while it runs. Do it, I said. He asked a few procedural questions. I answered them. Then he printed confirmation pages and stamped them. Nothing dramatic happened in that room. Just paper moving from one side of a desk to the other and a set of rules being activated. After that, I met my attorney. Short meeting, 2 signatures, a clear timeline, a checklist. On the drive home, I called Lauren. They showed up together, I said. I figured, she replied. Any yelling? No. Good, she said. Now you stay boring. Boring wins. When I got home, I didn't touch the kids' routine. Homework, dinner, showers. 1 chapter of a book before bed, the same small structure that keeps a house from tipping over when adults are unstable. Maya didn't come home that night. At 11:03 p.m. she texted, I'm staying at a friend's. I need space. I replied, okay. One word again. At 2:17 a.m., she called. I let it ring. Not to punish her. Because nothing good happens in the middle of the night when someone's trying to regain control. The next morning, I had the locks changed, not as a statement, as a boundary. My attorney had already explained what we could and couldn't do, what counted as escalation, and what counted as protection. We followed the rules. I didn't remove her belongings. I didn't touch anything that wasn't necessary. The locksmith arrived at 9:40 a.m. He worked quietly, no questions, in and out. When he finished, I reset the garage code and the security system, and I printed 1 letter. A formal notice prepared by my attorney stating the separation filing, the temporary living arrangements, and instructions for future communication. I taped it to the inside of the storm door where it was visible but protected from wind. Then I went to work like a normal person. At 1:26 p.m., my door camera alert went off. Maya stood on the porch. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than she usually did, like she'd been awake for too long. She didn't knock right away. She stared at the letter through the glass. When she finally read it, her shoulders dropped. Her face tightened. Then she covered her mouth with her hand and cried, quietly, without sound that carried. I watched the camera feed once, then I turned it off. Not because it hurt, because it wasn't useful. She left after 10 minutes. No scene, no pounding, just a slow walk back to her car. That night, she left a voice message. 6 minutes. It started with blame. You planned this. You set me up. Then begging. Please, we can talk. Please don't do this. Then silence, a long stretch where she was breathing into the phone. Then anger. You don't get to destroy me just because you're hurt. I didn't respond. The following Monday, I made one more controlled move. Maya worked for a private healthcare group. Their policies were strict, especially around financial conduct and reputational harm. I didn't call to complain about an affair. I didn't tell a dramatic story. I sent their compliance office a package, a cover note with my name and contact information, a link to public documentation, and 2 receipts tied to their corporate travel card used for expenses that did not match the stated purpose. That part mattered because it was simple, not emotional, not subjective, numbers and policy. Within 2 days, Maya was placed on leave pending investigation. When she called me from an unfamiliar number, her tone was different, less confident, more raw. "You told my job," she said. "I sent evidence of misuse," I replied. "They decided what to do with it." There was a pause. "You wanted to ruin me." I kept my voice steady. "No," I said. "I stopped absorbing the consequences for you." Then I ended the call. That same week, Evan finally reached out, not with an apology, with a message that was short and oddly polite. "Let's meet." I showed it to Lauren. She didn't hesitate. "He's testing you," she said. "He wants to see if you're emotional. Don't give him anything." So I didn't reply. Instead, Lauren did what she does when someone thinks they can move in the shadows. She ran him. Public filings, court records across states, prior civil complaints, anything that leaves a trail. 2 days later, she slid a thin file across my kitchen table while my kids were at school and the house was quiet. "Read this," she said. Inside was a restraining order filing from 4 years earlier, in another state, under a woman's maiden name. Evan's name was there, his date of birth, his address at the time. The allegations weren't flashy, they were specific. Coercion, financial manipulation, patterned contact after being told to stop. The case had been settled quietly, no headlines, no noise, but it existed. I sat with the file open and felt something shift, slow and heavy. It wasn't rage, it was recognition. This wasn't just my problem. This was a pattern that had touched other people. Lauren watched me carefully. "Don't do anything impulsive," she said. "I won't," I replied. Then I did the next clean thing. I forwarded the public record link to the same compliance office with one sentence. "This individual has a documented history that may be relevant to your internal review." No threats, no commentary, just relevance. After that, things moved fast without me pushing. Maya's leave became a termination within 48 hours, not because of my opinion, but because policy doesn't bend around explanations. Evan stopped messaging, and then he was served. Lauren arranged it through a contact in risk mitigation, someone who understood how to deliver legal boundaries without drama. A formal cease and desist tied to financial entanglement and prior conduct, along with notice that any further contact would be treated as harassment. Silence followed. The kind of silence that tells you someone has realized you are not a soft target. By the end of the week, the legal pieces were in motion. Asset division, custody schedule drafts, temporary orders, everything backed by documents, dates, and printed confirmation pages. And then Maya requested to see me in person, not through texts, not through calls, through our attorneys, the way adults do when they're out of excuses. I agreed to meet in a public place, mid-morning, when the cafe would be busy enough to keep everyone civilized. I arrived first. I chose a table near the window, ordered black coffee, and placed my phone face down beside the cup. Then I waited for her to walk in and say whatever she believed could still be salvaged. Maya walked in 10 minutes early. No makeup, no rings. Hair pulled back like she didn't have the energy to make it look like anything else. She scanned the room once, spotted me by the window, and came over with a slow, careful pace. She sat down across from me and folded her hands in front of her like she was trying to keep them from shaking. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The cafe smelled like toasted bread and coffee beans. Plates clinked at the counter. A couple in a booth behind her talked quietly about weekend plans. Normal life, happening inches away. Maya looked at my mug, then at my face. "I know I don't deserve kindness," she said. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I'd learned that if I started filling the space, she would use it to reshape reality. Silence, in a moment like that, is not emptiness. It's a boundary. She swallowed and kept going. "I didn't think you'd find out," she said. Not because you're clueless, because you trusted me. I nodded once. A small motion. Agreement with the fact, not the excuse. Her eyes got wet, but she didn't wipe them. She just let them sit there. I told myself it was temporary, she said. I told myself I would stop. I watched her hands. She kept pressing her thumb into her other palm over and over, like she was trying to stay anchored. I said calmly, "You didn't stop." She flinched a little at that, like she expected more words, more emotion, but I didn't give it to her. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photo envelope. The kind you get when someone prints pictures at a pharmacy kiosk. She slid one photo across the table. Our wedding day, not a framed version, just a printed picture. Me in a suit that fit too tight in the shoulders. Her in a dress she'd picked after months of looking. Both of us smiling at a version of life we thought would be stable just because we wanted it to be. She kept her voice quiet. "You can tear it up," she said, "or throw it away." I just didn't want to be the only one looking at it anymore. I stared at the photo. I didn't feel hate. I felt something simpler, a sense of finality, like a door closing without a slam. I folded the photo once and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Maya's eyes searched my face for something. Anger, forgiveness, a signal that the old rules might return. "What happens now?" she asked. I took a slow breath. "Now we follow the process," I said. "Custody schedule, finances, communication through attorneys when it needs to be, and we keep the kids out of the middle." She nodded quickly, like she'd been waiting to hear that there was still a structure she could stand on. Then she asked the question she came for. "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at her for a moment, not cold, not warm, just clear. "I already did," I said. "That's how I let go." Her face broke a little, and for the first time she looked like she understood the difference between forgiveness and restoration. I stood up, placed cash on the table for my coffee, and adjusted my jacket. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "But I'm not here to save you either." She nodded, eyes down. I walked out without rushing. Outside the air was cold and clean. My car was parked under a bare tree, branches tapping lightly in the wind. I sat for a minute before starting the engine, hands resting on the steering wheel the way they had that first night, steady. When I got home, the house was quiet. I took off my shoes by the door and went straight to the kitchen. I rinsed the coffee mug I'd used that morning, wiped the counter, and put the dish towel back where it belonged. Small order, simple routine. Later, I picked the kids up from school. We stopped for groceries. I let them pick the cereal, even though it was the sugary kind. At home, we made popcorn and watched a movie. They laughed at the same parts they always laughed at, and I noticed how calm the room felt without sudden tension shifting the air. That was the real reset. Not the legal filings, not the meeting, not the consequences. Just a quieter house and the knowledge that I didn't have to pretend anymore. A few weeks later, the paperwork kept moving the way paperwork does. Dates, signatures, timelines. Boring, consistent, predictable. The kind of boring that protects you. I kept the notebook in my desk drawer. I didn't read it anymore, but I didn't throw it away. It wasn't a souvenir. It was a reminder of what clarity costs and what it prevents. Every now and then, someone would reach out quietly. Not with gossip, with questions. A coworker who'd noticed strange transfers and didn't know what to do. A friend's brother who'd been sleeping on the couch for months and couldn't prove why he felt uneasy. A man I barely knew who said, "I think I'm being lied to, but I can't explain it." I never told them to explode their lives. I told them the same thing Lauren told me. Get the facts, keep it clean, move in order. If you stayed with me to the end, thank you. If you have ever been in a situation where you had to choose calm over chaos, I would like to hear how you handled it. Take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps this channel reach the people who need these stories. And comment below which city you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. 2 popular stories will appear next, and I will see you in the next one.